Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, December 13th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at the lack of split ticket voting in the 2020 presidential election. So essentially what split ticket voting means is that someone would be voting for a Democrat, Republican, or whatever on the presidential ballot or a top ballot, and then vote for another political party down the line. And usually we saw a pretty significant portion of this in the American electors, a pretty significant portion of the American voting groups that would just vote split ticket, would vote for a Democrat on the presidential level and then vote for a Republican, or vote for a Republican state in the national level and then vote for a Democrat statewide. But we saw very little of that. And I think the United States Senate elections perfectly embodied how polarized we are as a country, given that there were so many competitive races and not a single one of them had really changed from the incumbent party. Not a single competitive race besides Arizona and Colorado had changed from a political party. And since we were talking about the Electoral College and talking about the Senate this morning, I think it's important to actually take a look at the states that voted for Biden and voted for Trump, that voted for a GOP senator and a Democratic senator, or even some states that actually saw a split. But to be completely honest with you, I believe there's only one state that actually split in terms of how they voted. So in terms of the Trump GOP states, you're not going to see too many surprises. It's the same exact thing as we saw on the presidential map, with the exception of, actually, I don't think there's a single Trump state on here that voted for the Democratic Party on the Senate level. And if you add in Joe Biden and all of his victories, well, you will see that the Democratic Party did win over all of the states that they carried, except for one. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. So North Carolina red, and the state of Georgia is going off to a runoff. And there is actually one state that voted for Joe Biden, but voted for the GOP on the Senate level. And that is the state of Maine. There was not a single Donald Trump state that voted for Donald Trump on the presidential level that voted for a GOP candidate, a Democratic candidate on the Senate level. Not one. And that's fascinating. You know, we do understand that a lot of us realize that America is very polarized. We are a very polarized nation. But I think that this actually takes the cake. This election really shows us that there was very little split voting, you know, if at all. If we're looking at the 2018 results, we saw a little bit of it. We saw a Democrat actually win in West Virginia, and while the Senate election was definitely number one ticket in some of these states, that we were seeing a lot of Democrat votes on the Senate level and then Republican votes on the House level. We saw Joe Manchin in West Virginia win. We saw John Tester in Montana win. We saw some Democrats across the country actually win in what used to be Republican states, for example, over in Arizona when Kyrsten Sinema defeated Martha McSally. So the Democratic Party was able to win in some states, some very Republican states. West Virginia, voting for Trump by 30 points, voted for a Democrat just 2 years ago. But this election, when Donald Trump was on the ballot, when there was a Republican on the ballot, on the presidential ballot, and the presidential ballot was even on the list, the Democratic Party really suffered. Now, the GOP didn't make any gains either. They didn't win any states that were won by Joe Biden, and they didn't win them on the Senate level. However, it was up to the Democrats to win back the United States Senate at this point. And I think this is starting a trend that we've been seeing evolve recently, of polarization across the country, enough so that long-standing incumbents or even somewhat popular incumbents can no longer win some of these Senate races, can no longer win some of these governor races because of how partisan a certain state has gotten. For example, in 2018, we saw Democrats go down in Trump states. Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota, Claire McCaskill in Missouri, Joe Donnelly in Indiana, Bill Nelson in Florida. Top names you would hear in the Democratic Party 2 years ago, some of them pretty popular in their states, lost because of polarization and partisanship. If these were senators in swing states, can guarantee it, almost all of them would have won, except for the fact that Bill Nelson was from a swing state. But the rest of them, I have no doubt, would have won their races. But they were in states that had voted for Donald Trump by 19 points at a minimum in 2016, just 2 years prior. So 2018 was that starting trend where we actually saw a lot of the Trump states go back to being Republican states, not too inclined to vote for Democrats. And that's the same exact thing that we saw this election. The only state that voted differently, because we don't know how Georgia's going to go yet. Very possible both results happen, but for right now, the only state that voted differently than they voted on the presidential level, Senate versus presidential, is Maine. And that is the state that reelected Susan Collins by 8 points when they elected Joe Biden by 10 points. So that is a super significant swing away from the Democratic Party on the Senate level. So I can actually get rid of this tag because there isn't a single state that voted for Donald Trump that voted for a Democrat on the Senate level. That is very interesting. The two pickups for the Democrats were Colorado and Arizona, both of which went to Joe Biden. The Republican Party didn't gain any seats. They didn't win over any Democratic seats except for Alabama. And that was enough to make the net gain for the Democratic Party 1. But other than that, nothing changed. And Alabama was really expected to go to the GOP. So, what does this actually mean? Well, looking ahead to 2022, the Democratic Party actually might be in a little bit of trouble. If they win all of the states they carried in 2020, well, this is what the Senate map would actually look like. It would actually have 2 flips in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, currently held by Republicans. And it would actually be enough that they would win the majority, 52 to 48, assuming the Republicans win all of their states. But we don't know exactly how or who's going to be, not 52. It'll be 51 because I'm assuming that David Perdue wins that seat, and that seat will not be up for re-election if David Perdue or Jon Ossoff wins it. So it would be 51 to 49, which is still a majority. Yeah, still a majority, but you have to realize that the Democratic Party could very well lose some of these seats, given that it's supposed to be a Republican wave here, because we do see competitive states such as New Hampshire evolving, such as Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, which wouldn't automatically be Democratic pickups, such as Colorado and Arizona and Nevada. So it's very possible that we see a number of toss-up seats, but the Republican Party will likely start out with the majority. They will likely start out with the advantage to hold on to the majority, given that year will probably be very favorable to the Republican Party. Now, we don't know what's going to happen because we will see vaccine distribution, economic recovery that will probably benefit a President Biden, but that's all, certain ththings are possible. The Democratic Party led in the generic ballot for the 2010 midterms by double digits, end of 2009. So in just under, 8-9 months, the Republican Party went from being down 10 points nationally to winning the popular vote by over 5 points, enough to flip 60 plus seats in the United States House of Representatives in 2010. So a lot can happen in just a short period of time. Biden probably will enjoy the benefits of an economic recovery, a vaccine distribution plan under his administration, but that probably won't be enough to carry him through the midterms, enough so that the Democratic Party could actually gain seats. And I think the Senate is going to be very difficult for them to track. But even if we were working in a scenario where Joe Biden was to win all of the states that he carried in 2016, it would be enough so that he would only get the narrowest majority possible. Maybe not actually the narrowest, because that would be 50-50, but the narrowest outright majority possible, 51 to 49. The Republicans currently hold more than that. Before this election, they were 53-47. Now they're down to 52-48, and even in a map where, Joe Biden would be winning all of the states that he carried in 2020, it would still be one of the narrowest majorities possible. And I think that's a really important thing to note, because we are looking at the end of bipartisan senators. What I mean by that is we are seeing the end of pro-choice Republicans winning in Democratic states, the end of pro-life Democrats winning in Republican states, because we have become so polarized as a nation that this election was a very perfect example. The Senate results were a very perfect example of how far we have actually moved backwards in terms of allowing certain political parties to represent us that don't necessarily agree with how we vote on the presidential race, or may very well agree with them, but aren't the same political party as how people are voting on the presidential race. And that is something that is going to hurt a lot of these more, I guess you could say, conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans. Because at some point in time, the polarization is just going to be so great that we wouldn't see a Larry Hogan victory again. Compared to what, Charlie Baker did in Massachusetts, Larry Hogan didn't win by that large of a margin in 2018. As popular as he is, he did not win with 70% of the vote. Charlie Baker, we could see an end of governors such as Charlie Baker or Phil Scott or Chris Sununu. Why? Because they represent Democratic states, and if we continue at this trend where we are such a polarized nation where you couldn't even fathom voting for a member of another political party, and I think that largely has to do with how political parties stand on certain issues. They've taken very harsh stances on both sides that really prohibit the other party to even see how another political party could maneuver or really view one way or another. I think that's something that's really going to hurt a lot of these Democrats and Republicans in some of these states that aren't too favorable, that may be inclined to take more conservative or liberal positions in order to win their elections. What we've seen is that really doesn't work. Even popular governors such as Steve Bullock in Montana or well-known names across states aren't enough to just win an election outright, even in some of these more maybe not necessarily close states, but closer states, even in Montana, which wasn't as large of a margin as it was in 2016. Still not winnable by the Democratic Party. It was in 2018, but had that ballot been on the presidential race, I think Jon Tester is very lucky that he was up in 2018 and not in 2020. So overall, what we've seen in this election is just that polarization truly does exist. And if it was to overlay the 2022 Senate elections, it wouldn't be a majority that the Democratic Party would be super comfortable with, because they still have conservative Democrats representing Republican states that have to answer to their constituents. And looking at this possible majority, it still goes to show that we are such a divided nation that the Senate races and the Senate map would still be exceptionally close, even in an election where we would see a pretty significant victory over the incumbent party, a 5-point popular vote victory. And I think all of this is a testament to just how polarized we've become as a nation, and how it's going to be very difficult for other types of Republicans and Democrats to win without taking a very traditional standpoint under their political party. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my post-2020 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.